Hey guys, it's Liv here, and in today's video, I'm going to be discussing all of the buffs going into Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, or at least all the ones that I think matter. If you guys enjoy this type of content and you want to see more videos like it going into Scarlet and Violet, or once the games come out, subscribe for more and leave a like on the video, and comment which buffs you are excited to use in competitive. Now, I'm going to mention really quick, I did not include everything. If I didn't even think I had a talking point on it, I didn't include it. Some of these are going to be very quick as well, because there's not a lot to go about for them. For example, with Golduck, Nasty Plot is a pretty cool buff, and it's a pretty good option on Rain. Well, actually, Golduck I'm going to have a little bit more. This is a bad example, but some of these, though, in general, aren't going to be that long, because I'm not going to be going in depth on like a minute or two guide on how to use every Pokemon, because the metagame changed so drastically going into this gen that I truthfully don't know what the metagame is going to be like definitively, and I don't want to act like I do, but I want to go over some stuff and how I think it will improve these individual Pokemon, and that be that. So with that said though, let's get started with Golduck. So Golduck, of course, it's one of our better special swim options this gen, with of course Nasty Plot now being added to its moveset, as well as Power Gem. Power Gem's just here because it's here. It was another move that was added, and I thought maybe special sets might use it, but at the very least Nasty Plot is pretty big actually. This makes Golduck into a pretty strong Swift Swim option, especially for rain teams, being able to just muscle past a lot of different walls that would otherwise maybe take these hits on. With coverage, it's just Ice Beam. Sadly, a lot is a lost Scald, but that's in the nerf video at the very least. But stuff like Surf, and I think this also gets Muddy Water. Yep, it does. On top of also moves such as Ice Beam and Hydro Pump, and also Focus Blast for coverage. Depending on what you're attacking, this will typically be able to hit a lot of common Pokemon already, and Nasty Plot is a really huge buff for this, actually making it an incredible special breaker. If nothing else, in singles I think this helps Golduck in lower tiers, but truthfully Golduck might even be a viable rain Pokemon now for singles. I'm not really too sure on this one. Jury's out on if rain will be that viable, at least for special attackers. I think it might shift to a lot more physical mons, but regardless though, I think a Golduck will be pretty decent if nothing else, and Nasty Plot is a huge buff for this thing. Hisui Arcanine. All the Hisui mons got revamps, or at least a lot of them. This one got a lot of different options. Rockhead, for one, already an incredible buff for this Pokemon, in tandem with Head Smash especially. This will already become a really decent option. I think especially for VGC Tailwind teams, what we're looking at is that this Pokemon will be incredible. On top of this as well, it gets other moves such as E-Speed, Close Combat, Psychic Fangs, and some other stuff I couldn't fit, really the most noteworthy being Morning Sun. So in general, I think this will be a decent option. I've been saying already that I think Arcanine, especially with Intimidate, which thankfully it still keeps, it only lost Justified as an ability, but this Pokemon already was going to be a solid NU-Mon in my opinion, and I fully do stand by that. Now, if anything, I think it might actually become an RU-Mon or even UU potentially, especially UU with a Scarf set, with stuff such as Head Smash, Close Combat, Psychic Fangs, and then Will-O-Wisp. Not Will-O-Wisp, Flare Blitz, I think could be a really solid Mon in lower tiers, especially like the RU range. But in general, this will be a demon. I think that Hisui Arcanine, especially in VGC, will actually be a really good anti-intimidate mon option, and honestly I could see it being a really strong Pokemon on teams in general and become like an actual meta pick, considering this does still get stuff like Rock Slide, for example, in its moveset, which is actually really decent. It doesn't show it here, but I know on the PLA mons tier at the very least it does show that this thing gets Rock Slide, which again will be really strong for it in doubles, especially in tandem with stuff like Flare Blitz, and then also now having E-Speed for priority to pick off frailish stuff. This will be a good mon, an objective really good mon. Next up is Muck. Toxic Spikes and Drain Punch. These are both pretty good options, especially with Cursed Muck. Drain Punch can be really valuable for recovery. It's a great way to hit Dark types as well as Steel types, which, not to say that would give this thing a ton of issues, but in general, especially the Steel types, which otherwise, while its primary stab, Curse sets benefit a lot from this, and Toxic Spikes as well, and such a bulky poison will also be pretty good, in my opinion. Muck is already a Pokemon that sometimes finds a way into a solid PU tiering, and I think this will be a good option to help keep up with power creep, in my opinion, for a PU tier. I'm not really going to change it outside of that, though. Scizor and Kleavor, they all gain Close Combat as well as Scyther. Scyther and Scizor and Kleavor also got some nerfs. I'm not going to go into them in this video. Check back tomorrow. Trailblaze on Eevee as well as all forms getting Calm Mind. Calm Mind is the big one here, but Trailblaze could be beneficial, especially to Flareon at the very least, so I did want to mention that. But objectively though, Calm Mind is a huge buff. This is especially great for Vaporeon, Espeon, and Sylveon. Well, actually, Sylveon already got it, but especially, I think Sylveon already got it. Even still, regardless though, at the very least, it is huge for Vaporeon. I'm pretty sure that Sylveon got Calm Mind though. Yeah, it got Calm Mind. And on top of that as well, I know that Espeon did, but it's especially big for Vaporeon and also Glaceon, actually. Glaceon's another one. In low tiers, this could probably run like Wish, Protect, Calm Mind, and Freeze Dry and just be a real big nuisance considering how few really good Steel types are in low tiers. And for Vaporeon, sadly, Vaporeon lost Scald. Again, huge thing for tomorrow's video. We've already mentioned Scald like 20 times here, but Calm Mind is still pretty decent at the very least for Vaporeon, if nothing else. And I think especially with Vaporeon losing Scald, Calm Mind is going to be a pretty good backbone for it to fall back on. All evolutions do get this though. Flareon might have some usage, Jolteon might have some usage. Don't really think it's going to impact either though. Next up, all of the legendary birds, including the Galar ones, get Tailwind. Galar Zapdos had a couple moveset cuts otherwise, but in general, Tailwind is a pretty big buff, especially for Zapdos. This is already an incredible Pokemon in VGC, and thankfully it looks like it kept Hurricane, which I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous it wouldn't keep Hurricane, but it does seem like it kept it this gen, so it's not going to be BDSP Zapdos, it will be Sword and Shield Zapdos, but with a new move in tandem with that. So honestly, I think for Zapdos, this is a huge deal. For any other form, this will never matter. But Zapdos will definitely be a really strong Pokemon in VGC already, and having Tailwind is going to be amazing for it. We have Mewtwo with Earth Power and Power Gem. Originally, I wasn't going to include Mewtwo, but Earth Power is pretty decent actually for certain matchups, albeit it's more so just because of how good Ground is, but Earth Power might see some usage. Power Gem is the big one though, and it's solely if you were to, I guess, run a Spect Mewtwo and didn't want to click Side Strike, which even still, Mewtwo being able to force the fact that Ho will have to pick a sack either way, and it's also good coverage for Veltal while still being able to pressure a Ho matchup, unlike something such as Ice Beam. And as far as you could run Thunderbolt, sure, but risks Groudon, I guess. I don't know. These are both circumstantial options at best, but they're not terrible options on Mewtwo, and I could totally see sets where Mewtwo might tailor these in specific cases, but again, they're circumstantial at best. Sweet Typhlosion gets Eruption and Focus Blast, both of which are pretty decent. Losing Flash Fire is a little unfortunate, I won't lie. I think it's actually a little bit of a nerf to Typhlosion, but Frisk is still not bad. I think it's kind of a lateral ability change, I guess, because Frisk is really decent if nothing else for scouting items, and I think this is pretty huge, at least in VGC for Typhlosion, especially where it might have a place on Tailwind teams at 95 speed with Eruption, especially because it is a good spread option for Sun. However, with a big caveat here, I do think a Flash Fire would have been great actually, just be a nice option to not only take advantage of Torkoal going for Eruption, but also then going for Eruption of your own at full HP. So it's a bit of a give and take there. I think it's a latter option. VGC will benefit from being able to scout items, of course. In singles, it's still valuable, especially for Pokemon that might have a few item choices, but it's not as big of a deal when you can, to a degree, kind of telegraph the ladder, especially after enough time in the singles meta, at least to more of a degree than VGC where there's item clause at least. So Eruption and Focus Blast though are pretty big buffs. Focus Blast especially is a great way for this Pokemon to hit dark types, so Typhlosion will actually be usable. Congratulations Typhlosion fans, your starter doesn't suck. Jumpluff's up next. Nothing else. This mod's kind of cool. Getting Tailwind and Pollenpuff are both pretty good options for support. Claims whatever, but truthfully, I only mention this because it already got some good support options with stuff like Memento and Strength Sap in its utility. Sadly, this doesn't get Prankster. Someone actually mentioned that. I think my good pal Mia mentioned this in one of the ability buffs we did, and I think truthfully, if this thing got Prankster, this would be an amazing Pokemon this gen, and we would actually see this being like just a Whimsicott substitution. Having Tailwind at all, though, is a really good buff for this, if nothing else for low tiers, or at least for being kind of usable in VGC, and I mean, who knows, this might actually get some use, but probably not. Next up is Espeon. Power Gem, I solely mentioned this because this doesn't actually get Mystical Fire like I thought. This is kind of good coverage option for bug types, I guess. Not that they're super switching in, but I guess, I don't know, since it's in the same tier as Low Ticks, you could probably run a Protect set with Power Gem and then take it out that way, because, well, I guess no, I think it gets Sucker Punch anyway. The point being, though, is that Espeon might benefit from this, but probably not. Body Press Fortress, this is a pretty decent one if nothing else. This could just invest as a Fizz Def tank and run like Spike, Stealth Rock, Body Press, and Rapid Spin, and be pretty decent. I'll give it that. Body Press and nothing else, it's just a budget Scarm option, but I don't know how meta this will be. It won't be terrible. I think that Body Press and nothing else is just finally an option that won't make this thing passive damage-wise. Especially with everything losing Toxic, it's a little obnoxious. Oh no, I think this keeps Toxic. It didn't mention that Toxic got cut, but I can't really imagine that Fortress keeps it of all mons. We'll have to see. Gardevoir's up next. Aura Sphere is pretty decent for this, if nothing else, not needing to miss Focus Blast. But at the same time, though, this is a Psychic type that has a stab that handles Dark, so it's not a huge deal for the Dark matchup. It's more so better for the Steel matchup, actually. Which in that case is pretty decent. Aura Sphere Guard in general is pretty good. I will say, though, I'm a little annoyed at Gardevoir because it seemed to have lost Recover and Ice Beam, especially Recover, which was huge from PLA, but You're still pretty good, I'll give it that. Breloom got some really good buffs actually. This got Close Combat, Bulldoze, Gunk Shot, and I believe, nope, not this one. Okay, unfortunate, but it is what it is. These still got some pretty good options if nothing else. Gunk Shot, Close Combat, and Bulldoze are all really huge, especially Gunk Shot and Close Combat. These will be very beneficial, especially on Poison Heal sets, since Breloom no longer needs to worry about just Technician spamming for a fighting option. Even still, Technician sets might go with like Mach Punch plus Close Combat, just to have a really strong heavy hitting option and then a good priority option that is a little bit damage increased. But Breloom is going to be really benefiting this gen in my opinion. I think that it's going to really hold up in the OU tier, especially considering it already was probably made a weaker OU caliber mon. Definitely this will help a lot, especially with how offensively leading the metagame is going, and Breloom having Poison Heal is just a nice residual recovery option will be also beneficial. Next up is Hariyama though. Headlong Rush, for anyone who doesn't know, this is now a ground type close combat, and Hariyama gets it. In tandem with also Drain Punch. Drain Punch will probably be the bigger buff, truthfully. The fact this now gets a good form of recovery. But Headlong Rush will still be decent. It's a nice single target option for ground type moves in PGC. Hariyama will probably get some usage this gen in PGC, I'll be honest. It does usually, at least in the regional dex formats, and I can't see that changing for the whole gen for VGC for this, to be honest. Especially looking at what is and isn't viable. This will be a decent option for something else for stuff like T-Tar. And also just a good fake out support mon, especially for Trick Room teams. So Hariyama will objectively be a really good mon in my opinion. We have Metagame up next. This gets Axe Kick and Trailblaze as far as new moves go. I'll be honest, I've never even looked up what Axe Kick does. So it seems like this is a physical fighting option. This looks like it's basically, so user attacks by kicking up in the air and slamming its heel down on the target. This may confuse the target if it misses the user. This is just a better high jump kick. With 10 base power less, but it's a 30% chance for confusion. That's whatever, to be honest. I thought I read somewhere about Metagame getting close combat. No, it does get close combat. Yep, okay. So I read through these first, and I didn't even read that it got close combat. So Axe Kick will not even matter. But Trailblaze is pretty cool, though. It's a nice speed boosting option. If nothing else, it's just a grass type flame charge. So in my opinion, this will be a good mon this gen. We'll see Metagame probably actually being really good with choice banded sets, or even maybe even just like Life Orb for attacks could be decent. These moves do translate over to not dex at the very least. Mega Metagame with close combat will be huge. That will actually be a monster, because Metagame, one of the best ways around it was switching in some sort of ghost type to make high jump kick crash, or for going for protect could potentially be a good option around high jump kick, but close combat fixes all those issues, and it still keeps the damage that at the very least that Drain Punch would not have kept. So Metagame, if this translates to Nat Dex, will objectively be amazing. We have Grumpig up next. This gets Nasty Plot, Dazzling Gleam, and Earth Power. Honestly, it's not terrible. Grumpig already kind of has some like PUZ niche depending on the generation you reference it in, but it's definitely a not awful low tier option. The 90 special attack with Nasty Plot is actually pretty good. Calm Minded will probably still be better, but it depends on how the generation goes. Dazzling Gleam, if nothing else, is pretty good though, especially because it doesn't really get a great option, especially for darks outside of Focus Blast. So that could be decent. And Earth Power, again, great option coverage wise if nothing else. So we have Trophies up next, Hurricane and U-Turn. Hurricane won't really matter, especially because all of this thing's abilities benefit from the sun, but it's nice to have. And then U-Turn will be decent as a pivot at the very least. If nothing else, Trophies still kind of sucks, but these are noteworthy enough moves for it, and they will at least make it suck a lot less. It's still gonna suck though. Groudon, it gets Crunch, Spice, Will-O-Wisp, and Body Press. Honestly, these are pretty big buffs for Groudon. For one, Body Press is pretty decent. This thing, if I remember correctly, does... Oh, no, it doesn't get Iron Defense. It's still fine. It still gets Curse, if nothing else, which will be pretty decent for setup on this. Oh, no, it doesn't get Curse. I thought this thing got a status option to set up. Does this not get a status setup option? For Fizdef, it gets Bulk Up actually. That's the one. Okay. Well, Body Press still won't be terrible for especially Fizdef Groudons. This thing has a monstrous Fizdef stat already. On top of this as well, Spike's Groudon will be pretty beneficial for especially pressuring other ground types and Ubers. Will-O-Wisp will be amazing for Zacian matchups, and it might actually make Helmet Groudon a legitimate check to Zacian. And I use check in the very loosest sense, but technically speaking, this would actually kind of pressure it. Outside of, you know, just clicking Precipice Blades. But regardless though, Will-O-Wisp is still pretty decent for all the Dragon Dance options as well as stuff like Zekrom, especially if it, I guess, was behind, well, no, I guess for Magnet Rise, Zekrom, I guess, I don't know. I'm listing out options that this thing could just Precipice Blades, and I'll be honest, it's sounding a lot less impressive now that I'm saying it out loud. But one thing it is pretty decent for, at the very least, is stuff like the opposing Groudon matchup, as well as weakening Duskmane to Charisma before Weakness Policy set pops off, because Duskmane does typically run a lot of Weakness Policy Policy and Ubers, albeit typically its best set is Spidef with Leftovers or Fizdef with Rocky Helmet, but Weakness Policy is still pretty decent on it, if nothing else, and having Willows is pretty good for this, as well as for VGC, it's going to be great options for stuff like, for example, Zacian, especially with redirection support, especially, well, no, again, because Precipice, but it'll be good for Solgaleo with Weakness Policy. Again, there are a lot of good options this is good for, but typically this could also just Precipice play them. It's really going to be beneficial for mons you would have to worry about Weakness Policy going off for, as well as for stuff, it'll have cases for a few options. Stuff like Arceus, actually, it might be a really good check for, considering a lot of SD Arceus will be really good this gen, which I'll go into Arceus in a bit, but Willows in general, though, will be a decent option on Groudon. I don't think it'll redefine it, but it'll be not bad, especially with Toxic being so very little spread to other Pokemon. Next up is Rayquaza. Rayquaza got U-turn, Stealth Rocks, and Wild Charge. It did have a couple cuts, but honestly, U-turn on Scarfray will be a legitimate good option. In tandem with stuff like Dragon Claw and also Dragon Ascent, I think that we might legitimately see a really good Scarfray, especially on Mega Ray. Stealth Rocks won't really matter. Wild Charge is not terrible, but again, I don't think it'll matter. U-turn is the big buff here, though. This will legitimately make Choice Ray like a demon in competitive. My prediction is that it will probably more so matter for Scarf, but Band will probably still see some use from this, if nothing else. We have Trailblaze up from Luxray. Again, just Grass Flame Charge. This will be decent coverage for grounds, if nothing else. And I think that's where the conversation ends, making this thing able to touch stuff like Quagsire and Gastrodon. Speaking of Gastrodon, this thing gets Spikes and Stealth Rocks, which will be pretty big, especially with the Scald loss. But also another option this thing gets is Chilling Water, which is the new move this generation. I'll be honest, I haven't really looked a ton into this, but it looks like basically this is a 50 base power special water option that also lowers the target special attack by 1 stage, which honestly will be pretty decent if nothing else. This could be a nice Scald stand-in, but objectively speaking, it will not replace Scald. Because one, that attack drop is able to be easily cleared by stuff like Clear Smog, Haze, or just switching out. And two, the fact that it is significantly weaker base power. This will at best be a nice, cop-out for the fact it lost Scald, but it objectively will not fix the issue. Gastrodon will probably just run Surf again in competitive, or maybe Muddy Water if we're playing doubles, but Spikes and Stealth Rocks are pretty good buffs. This objectively will probably have a place in the meta just solely off of having Tool Hazards plus Recovery alone. This objectively will have a place. Drifblim gets Air Slash. It's kind of cool for a special set at the very least. I guess maybe Flare Boost might have a niche in lower tiers at best. But Strength Up will probably still be the better option with like utility support and just, again, being a nuisance with stuff like Tailwind, Strength Up, etc. But Air Slash is kind of cool. It was long overdue if nothing else. I didn't even realize Mon didn't get Air Slash, but I'm glad it does now. Garchomp, Spikes and Liquidation. Liquidation will be great for a Hippo matchup, and truthfully, I think we might be looking into a meta where Garchomp might have a case to be banned. Less so because of Liquidation. I don't think that's really the reason. Neither is Spikes, I'll be honest. Just Garchomp going into a meta where one of its better checks is Hippowdon, and now it has a move to super effectively hit that. We might see a ban, but I'll be honest, I think that Garchomp will still have 4 moveset syndrome in terms of what checks it chooses to handle between stuff like Corviknight, Hippowdon, etc. And while in theory it can handle its checks, especially now more reliably than having to run Outrage to dent Hippowdon, I don't know if it will really make a huge difference. I think it's solely the fact that stuff like Recovery moves getting nerfed to 5 PP, and the fact that this is such an aggressive meta already, and Garchomp being such a good speed tier for an offensive mon, those things I think will matter more. But Spikes is still pretty cool. It's great for wearing down Hippowdon easier, and I think that you could also make a case for a 3 attack set with Spikes, and it'll be a little bit more beneficial, especially with everything running boots, at least that are rock weak. But to be fair, Spikes is still not terrible. Next up for the final set for this box, we do have Gallade, which gets a new move Aqua Cutter, which is basically just a Psycho Cut for water, as well as stuff like Sacred Sword, Shadow Claw, and Bulk and Agility. And now you might be wondering, why does stuff like Shadow Claw and Aqua Cutter matter? Well, it's because of the new ability Sharpness that Gallade is one of the Pokemon that gets, and basically this is a huge example of Pokemon ripping off a fan game. Radical Red did this as well as many other games. Radical Red was the one that popularized Gallade with this, being Sharpness. It basically just increased cutting moves, and all 3 of these moves actually do count towards this. A really huge buff for Gallade, actually, I'll be honest. I could totally see Scarf sets or even Sword Sand sets being really good in lower tiers. I'm talking like NU tiering. This could be a legitimate Pokemon. Maybe if not NU, then PU for sure. But this will definitely be a big buff for Gallade, and I think if nothing else, the precedence this sets will be really appreciated by other Pokemon, which we'll get into in a bit, because there are a couple other Pokemon that benefit significantly more than Gallade does. But it's a cool Pokemon to get it if nothing else, and I'm glad that they didn't just give this to some other Pokemon and not Gallade, because that would have been such a disservice to Gallade. Next up though, we have box number 2, Mystical Power, which is going to all of the Pixies, or all of the Lake Trio, if nothing else. Basically, it's an 80 base power special attack that has a 100% chance to boost the special attack stat. Honestly, this will be really good. I think it will be best on Mesprit and Azelf. Uxie probably won't really care about it too much. Truthfully, I think this hurts more from not having the recovery buff that PLA gave it. Though I will say it doesn't mention that was cut, so maybe it keeps recover. I would love for it to keep recover. It doesn't mention it was cut. And to be fair, it did mention a lot of the PLA stuff, but it also mentioned a lot of the PLA stuff that was kept. So I'm really unsure on this one. Jury's out. I'm hoping it keeps recover. Dialog is up next. This gets Trick and Focus Blast. Truthfully, I don't think either matter a ton, but Focus Blast being a higher base power fighting option might be beneficial. This Dialog does run Aura Sphere from time to time, so I don't think it's exactly some out there coverage option, but Focus Blast, I don't know. I really don't know if Dialga will actually care about this gen, but it might. I at least don't think it won't care about it or nothing else, and that's where I'll leave that, because Dialga's not as important in the metagame anyway. Arceus. Fuck this Pokemon. They gave it so many options. They gave it Dragon Dance, Bulk Up, Body Press, Taunt. These are just for the most useful moves. This also got stuff like Healing Wish, Hydro Pump, Imprison, Flare Blitz, Power Gem, Gunk Shot, Heavy Slam, Foul Play, Stored Power, Hex, Hurricane. It did lose Whirlpool though, so you know, this one kind of fucking sucks now. No, I'm kidding. Whirlpool actually does suck a little bit, I will say, specifically for Perish Trap sets. Arceus Dark actually did run this a lot in Ubers, where it would run Whirlpool with Perish Trap. And this is a little bit unfortunate. I will say though, it's not really a huge deal for Arceus, if I'm going to be completely honest, because it does still get a lot of other good options. And truthfully, I mean, losing Perish Trap, yeah, that sucks a little bit. But I don't know if this will really make a huge deal in Arceus' usefulness. Does this thing still get something like Sand Tomb or like Fire Spin? It doesn't look like it actually does. It's a little bit weird, I'll be honest. But even still, yeah, Whirlpool sucks as a cut, sure. You know what this was? This is probably a Gen 4 thing, where it learned it in Gen 4 because it was an HM. That's probably why it doesn't have it for anything else. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, actually. Regardless, though, it's still not bad by any means. Arceus losing Whirlpool, I guess, sucks for one type and for one particular set on it, where it had many viable sets. But even still, Arceus got so many options. Truthfully, this is an AG mod now. I think, in my personal opinion, I cannot see a world where Arceus normal, at least, is not AG. And I think a few other types, such as Ground, Fairy, and Dark and Ghost, all will join it in AG. Especially Ghost. I think Ghost benefits a ton from Body Press, being able to run more defensive sets with it. But even still, all 5 of those I think definitively are gone from the tier. And I think a lot of other Arceuses could join it, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Arceus as a whole just got a ban. But I will say at the same time that Arceus having all these buffs might just make an Arceus type mandatory on every team and just making it allowed. Though, I don't know, I really feel a certain way about this mod. It is not good. I'm not looking forward to Ubers this gen if it stays around. But at the same time, maybe it's going to be such an HO meta that this will be a fun option. Who fucking knows? I don't see it staying. Samurott. Hisuian Samurott. Both forms get Drill Run, I will say. I'm going to mention that off the bat. But even still, Hisuian Samurott got a lot of other options. For one, Ceaseless Edge now lays Spikes, which is pretty cool. Sharpness is a really good buff, again, for Gallade specifically. This gets options like Sacred Sword, Sword Stance, Sucker Punch, Knockoff, Mega Horn, all of which are added to the moveset, as well as the additionally mentioned Drill Run. This will be a legitimately good option. I totally see this thing being an RU mon for sure. Maybe even UU, in all honesty. The typing is really good. I'm kind of leaning a little more RU, but Knockoff is a pretty big buff, as well as Sucker Punch, as well as the fact this does get Sharpness to boost stuff like Sacred Sword. If you told me this mon was going to be UU or even OU viable, I wouldn't even fight you on it, I'll be honest. I could see either. Personally, I'm predicting RU though. The speed's a little lackluster, and I think truthfully we have a lot better options, such as, for example, Quackofall as an offensive water type with Sword Stance, or even still as far as the UU tier goes, Crawdon will probably find its way in there again, so we might see this thing in the RU tier. I wouldn't be shocked if it's UU or OU though. It's got a lot going for it this gen, truthfully, and I think that Samurai is probably going to be the best by a good amount of the Hisui starters. Though all 3 got buffed, so for any of you Decidueye fans, we're getting there. We're getting there. That's a whole fucking thing to unpack. Oh my god. But content for later in the video. Ice Spinner on this, as well as Victory Dance, are both pretty cool options. Ice Spinner, basically, it's an 80 base power ice type option that basically just clears terrain. It's not dependent on terrain staying up, unlike Seal Roller, which makes this an actual viable move. It's great for handling stuff such as flying type Pokemon, and also it's a really good option for Landorus matchups. This might actually be a great Pokemon in OU. It'll probably be like legitimately viable, especially with Victory Dance being a physical Clear Dance option. This will be like the savior of Sun teams as far as VGC goes, and it's going to be such a good Pokemon.
Legitimately, I think this will be meta in BGC, like a very meta Pokemon. Between Close Combat, Leaf Blade, or even, sadly it didn't get Solar Blade, a little unfortunate. What'll we do? Well, actually, hold on, does Petalil get Solar Blade? Because that might actually be something to look into. If Petalil gets Solar Blade, Petalil. No, it does not get Solar Blade. Okay, so it might not get it. A little unfortunate, but who knows. At the very least, though, Defog plus Victory Dance plus Ice Spinner are all really good buffs, especially Defog on a Scarf set. This will legitimately have a place in OU and PGC, in my opinion. Wave Crash on all of the Basculins, and specifically Red and Blue Strike was what it mentioned because White Stripe already got it. It's pretty cool. It was kind of expected, but it's pretty cool. Maybe Reckless sets could take advantage of it for at least not needing to take recoil damage. But Adaptability will probably run it just solely for the fact it's a harder hitting water option. If in general, I don't think it's really changed Basculin's usage, but it's something. Crocodile lost a lot, but it gained Gunk Shot, which is pretty cool for fairy matchups at least. Not really a huge buff, but it's something. Hisui Zoroark, this thing got the Zoroark stat line treatment, so these stats are fake. It actually just matches Zoroark's to a T. It also gets, let me rephrase, it got a 5 special attack and speed cut. I don't remember if Zoroark actually gets 100 attack. I'm pretty sure it gets like 90 or something. But if nothing else, though, it does, yeah, it actually gets 105, so it's even weaker than Zoroark. But at the very least, though, this did get a 20 cut to its special attack and a 5 cut to its special attack, it's 120 now, and a 5 cut to its speed, so it's 110. Again, Nerf's video though, we'll go over that more. But Hyper Voice, Focus Blast, and Trick are all really good options on this. Having coverage for dark types as well as a viable normal stab, really good up for this Pokemon. I think this will still have a place in OU if nothing else, or at the very least it's going to be like a UUBL mon. The typing is way too good as a stab, and this coverage is really, really well deserved for it. Electros, Stomping Tantrum, Close Combat, and Liquidation. Liquidation's great actually as ground coverage, especially with the ground immunity as an electric type. Close Combat, it's just a really good fighting option, and Stomping Tantrum's great for terrain, I guess. And also it's a good single target ground option in VGC. I think it'll have a place in the meta. It's probably gonna be like an NUPU mon with Assault Vest and just a little bit better for it. As far as doubles goes, maybe this will have niche, but I don't really see it being too useful. Beartic, legitimately viable hail option now. This gets Close Combat and Earthquake. I didn't even know it didn't get Earthquake before, I'll be completely honest, but it doesn't. Really kind of a shame, but Close Combat and Earthquake are huge options for Steel matchups for this. This will legitimately be a viable option to Hail now. And I think Hail will have a lot looking forward to with stuff like Bear Tickets Titan for it. It might legitimately be a viable weather, so we'll have to see. Or I guess Snowscape. Whole different weather, might deserve its own video. I don't know if I'll have the time to go over it, but we'll see. Braviary, Hisui. U-Turn versus Defog, all pretty good options on it. Espering as well, being a nice speed boosting option. For the full move that this thing does, it's an 80 base power, 100% special option for Psychic, and it's a +1 speed boost. Will be really useful on that 65 base speed. I will say though, that's only going to be useful on Tinted Lens sets because Sheer Force will not give a shit about this. Tinted Lens sets might actually have some use though, I will say, especially the fact that this is able to just run stabs and then Massacre Steel types. The coverage is really good on this Pokemon actually. I could see this maybe being like a really good RU option in singles with stuff like Tinted Lens plus Sheer Force being a really big 50-50 for teams. Especially with Tinted Lens on specs with Esper Wing, it's basically just going to be a budget and Mega. Well, a lot better typing than your Mega as a stab, as well as an offensive typing, as well as the fact that the move being the speed boosting option will be very different from how your Mega functions, because this will actually keep its speed boosting option with Tinted Lens. So maybe Mega's going to be the budget Braviary Hisui, who fucking knows. Regardless, this will be great. Both Landorus forms get Nasty Plot and Taunt now. Honestly, Taunt's pretty cool, but Landorus lost Knockoff, which kind of sucks. Taunt will still be really good, though, as a stall breaker for Lando, if nothing else. When are we going to ban this mon? I'll be honest, what more does this thing need to get before we ban it? Lando, I at the very least better not fucking get a Lao set in early OU. It does not need it. We ban it every time. It's like the first mon in OU. Please do not allow it with Nasty Plot. I don't even want to entertain that metagame. Do not allow it, OU. Simple. Chestnut, Close Combat, Body Press, and Wide Guard. Wide Guard's kind of cool for VGC if nothing else. Body Press and Close Combat are pretty good though, especially on Belly Drum sets. Close Combat will be like a legitimately good option for this, as a really good just Riker for fighting in tandem with stuff like Seed Bomb, with Salic Berry, with Substitute Belly Drum. Will actually be a pretty good buff for this if nothing else. Delphox getting Knockoff, not Knockoff, Nasty Plot and Focus Blast, huge for it. Focus Blast is going to be incredible for this Pokemon. Kind of wish they gave it the Radical Red treatment though, and took off this dog shit ability Magician for Magic Guard. When they do that, we'll talk about Delphox being like an OU mon. Sadly, it doesn't get mind blown, which a little unfortunate, and I purely say that comparing to Radical Red Delphox, but even still, Nasty Plot, Focus Blast, and Magic Guard would legitimately make this like an OU threat. This has a toolkit that's really good for it, and even still, I think that Boots will be a really good option on this, if nothing else, with like Boots, Nasty Plot, Psyshock, Focus Blast, and a Fire move. And this might actually have a place in the OU tier, I'll be honest. It's pretty good offensive fire. Truthfully, though, I think it's going to be in the UU-RU range with this buff, especially in the RU range, in my opinion, though we could actually see this as a QU threat. We don't have a lot of good fire types that'll be really strong in the low tiers. It's going to depend on if Scarlet Deergay ends up in the OU or UU tier. I could see it in OU, I could see it in UU, and I think if it's in UU, this ends up, I think regardless, this just ends up in one tier below Scarlet Deergay, regardless. Gudra Hisui. Shelter is now just an Iron Defense clone, so I put Iron Defense here. Flash Cannon and Body Press are both pretty good buffs, especially not needing to rely on Steel Beam. This will legitimately be like a UU-OU mod for sure. Especially with Shelter being an Iron Defense clone, this will actually be a really good option as far as singles goes. I'm kind of shocked they gave this thing Body Press, because this thing is kind of going to be a monster with it in my personal opinion. Regardless though, this is legitimately set out to be an OU mon, maybe UU at worst, but probably UU BL though if it ever falls down there. The typing is way too good, and having Iron Defense plus Body Press will be great on this. Both Avalog forms got Icicle Crash, kind of cool. It's really just a weaker version of the signature for Hisui Avalog. That's where I'll leave that, I guess. Not going to change Avalog usage at all though, in my opinion. Diancie gets Spikes. Pretty good option for hazard sets. This could run like dual hazards, Heal Bell, and then Moonblast in low tiers and be pretty good. I don't know if this is going to really change what tier Diancie's in, but it's a cool option. And I think especially Suba's had the Mega Diancie variants, if this does carry over to the Megas moveset, will be pretty good. Hisui Decidueye. It's time we cover this fucker. So this thing got a lot. I will say, if a single person in this video comments that they knew Hisui Decidueye would be good all along, the reason that you think it's going to be good is very different from the reason it's actually going to be good. Even outside of getting stuff like close combat, which was, to be fair, kind of expected, or at the very least high jump kick, which was, again, kind of expected. I will say, though, high jump kick was, if I remember correctly, in PLA, so I stand by that one a little bit less, but even still, close combat, kind of expected. Shadow Sneak is kind of cool. Sucker Punch is kind of cool. Not as expected, but to be fair, still good. Triple Arrows being now 90 base power. I don't remember if this thing got a secondary effect for triple arrows. Yeah, so basically it's a -1 defense stat and a 30% chance to flinch. So I knew the move would be good. I think I knew it would eventually be like usable on it, but the speed was still terrible. I will say the 30% chance to flinch will not matter a ton, but the -1 defense every single time with a 90 base power physical fighting option with no drawback in accuracy, that'll be pretty good. That'll be a really strong option. It's just a better version of Thunderous Kick, actually, because I think Thunderous Kick was 80. It's objectively just a better version of that. But even still, this thing also gets Roosted Defog, which are really incredible, especially how much Defog got cut in this game. This also gets stuff like Trailblaze, which will be a great way to boost his speed, which, again, not really something that people would have thought would have been as widespread, or really what it would entail for Decidueye, but it gets it. And it gets Scrappy, which is its new hidden ability over Long Reach, which will, again, be amazing for this Pokemon. If anyone told me that they thought that Hisui and Decidueye might have a chance of being an RU-mon, I would have laughed at you. I would have told you it's BU-mon, and I'd have told you I've made so many fucking jokes about this mon being dog shit, and how bad it is. I've run so many tangents about this Pokemon being bad, and it's so much better than I would have thought it would have been. Like, I knew it would probably get something going for it. In Gen 8, I still stand by its tiering. The tierless videos are not at all aged badly because of this, because it was off of its PLA tiering, and off of its PLA moveset. That's fine. I will say though, this mod being like legitimate RU caliber though for Gen 9 is pretty astounding to me. I thought it at best might end up in the NU tier, but I think this has like an RU UU case at this point, I'll be honest, especially with Trailblaze being a nice flame charge for its speed boosting. You could probably get away with like triple arrows with Trailblaze, Roost, and Sword Stance, and mull a lot of teams with the Scrappy set. Albeit, to be fair, you could still run a lot of other options. If I remember correctly, Brave Bird is an egg move on Rowlet. But even still, if nothing else, I mean, this still could be a pretty usable option, if nothing else. I think this will be, yeah, this gets Brave Bird anyway, actually, I take it back. But even still, I think this will, like, legitimately be a good RU-UU-mon in this gen, and I think it'll be really good. So I guess, Decidueye fans, congratulations. I was wrong in this still being a dog shit Pokemon. You win, ha ha ha. I really did not want to make this video solely because of that Pokemon alone, but now that I've went off of that tangent, Oricorio gets Quiver Dance. Kind of cool, not gonna matter a ton unless if Oricorio itself becomes meta, which in that case, maybe Oricorio will become meta for other Oricorio, which is kind of funny to think about. Otherwise though, kind of shit, but it's a cool buff, especially with how it interacts with itself. Magearna getting Spikes won't really matter a lot, I'll be honest. A lot of support mag or bulky mag run AV. Support sets it might make a difference on, but even still, it might be like, what, Volt Switch, Heal Belt, spikes, and then like a stab. I don't know. I think it's gonna be an outclassed option of mag, but it's a cool one, I guess. It's just, I think that it's gonna be like a 6th or 7th move on most teams. But spikes objectively though on a steel type, it's good that this thing finally gets hazards. Don't think it'll make a huge difference. Dreadnought gets Shell Smash. Honestly, this is pretty cool. Apparently, if I remember correctly, my good pal Matt O'Shea told me, and I do need to verify this before I say it on video, but if I remember correctly, this is actually like the fastest Shell Smash Pokemon like in the game. Or even just in general at this point, which I do need to verify this, because again, I don't want to look like an idiot on the channel. I don't like doing that. So of the Pokemon in the game, this actually is the fastest. Blastoise would outpace it by 4 base speed, but it's still pretty cool. That's like objectively pretty damn cool, I won't lie. So Dreadnought having a really good stab combination as well with that is pretty decent. Strong Jaw is pretty good as an ability, as well as Shell Armor and Swift Swim. Truthfully, I think this will actually make Dreadnought a viable Pokemon. We already see that stuff like, for example, Barbarical is pretty good. While that thing does have Tough Claws, which is a little bit better of an ability for this, Shell Smash will still be really good on this, and it will legitimately have a place. Colossal gets Power Gem. Lost Scald, I don't really care about that. Power Gem is cool though. It's slightly stronger than Ancient Power is for special Steam Engine sets. It's really the extent that this goes. Grim getting Parting Shot. They basically took the Incineroar route of making a really broken Dark type, and then the next gen making it even more broken. They just wanted something to take the flagship of usage now that Incineroar is gone. And honestly, this having Prankster, this might even be a more hellish version of that. I don't even want to think about how broken Grim will be, but this might be the objective top 1 Pokemon of VGC now, I'll be honest. I cannot think of a better substitute than this. We'll have to see how this goes. I might get a conniption building around Grimmsnarl on VGC with Parting Shot, I'll be honest, but we'll have to see. Finally for this box, we have Zamazenta getting Body Press. This is a pretty big buff. Zamazenta will like be a legitimately good Pokemon now in VGC and singles, and as well as VGC, to be fair. With the Iron Defense sets, which this thing already did get, this is a legitimately good buff. Truthfully, I think it's one of the most game-changing ones of the whole list, but I'm not going to use it for the thumbnail because of the fact that it's an Uber and no one probably cares about Zamazenta getting Body Press. They probably don't even like Zamazenta anyway, as far as Smoke on people go. But yeah, Body Press, this is good. Great for Crown Form as well, despite the stat drops. Finally, though, we have 12 more Pokemon, starting with Zarude. Actually, 14 more, starting with Zarude. This gets Swords Dance as well as Trailblaze. Swords Dance is a huge buff for this Pokemon. It's one that this thing did not need. Swords Dance, Trailblaze, Darkest Lariat, filler sets will probably actually be really good on this Pokemon, and I could totally see this thing having an OU case. We'll legitimately make this thing usable. I didn't even know Zarude was going to be in the game, but it's apparently a home transfer now, so welcome to that. We also got the Regis back, so VGC beware. Regidrago, though, speaking of, gets Earthquake and Earth Power. Pretty huge in this, actually. Bandit sets will really appreciate this. I think as well, Spec sets will really appreciate this. Just a nice form of coverage, if nothing else, for stuff like Steel matchups, which will be great, as well as Fairy matchups. Because beforehand, if you were running this thing, it had like Fire Fang as its best option, physical or special. So that'll be pretty big, especially for the non-Corviknight, Skarmory, and Celesteela matchups, for Earth Power at least. Earthquake as well, but Earthquake at least, again, it was a lot better represented for physical coverage than it was for special. So I'm not as concerned about Earthquake. I think Earth Power is the bigger buff here, especially in tandem with Dragon Energy. That'll be huge. Regidrago, though, will objectively have a lot better usage. I don't think it'll be suddenly some OU Pokemon or like some UU Pokemon, because truthfully, I think that Terra Blast will probably not live to see even the creation of UU, and also on top of that as well, I think truthfully in VGC, well, actually in VGC this might run like a Terra Steel, and I think that could be pretty filthy, but otherwise, though, I don't know. This will be a good Pokemon this gen, though, objectively. Spectrier gets Draining Kiss now. Kinda cool for dark coverage, I'll be honest. It's really where this conversation ends. It's just kinda cool for dark coverage. Recovery could be kinda good. This is already getting banned from OU, though. It got banned from OU in Sword and Shield, where it had worse coverage. Now it gets an extra move, and a lot less Pokemon to cover it than Crown Tundra gave it, so not gonna really make a big difference. Cleavor gets Sharpness, U-Turn, Night Slash, and Psycho Cut. This is legitimately good. I'm glad Cleavor kept U-Turn. I'm glad it keeps Night Slash and Psycho Cut. Well, it gets Night Slash and Psycho Cut from Scyther. Sharpness is a great ability on this Pokemon, especially in tandem with these two moves. I'm curious to see where this goes. I hope that Sharpness boosts Stoneaxe and nothing else. I'm pretty sure this would boost Stoneaxe. I cannot really see why it wouldn't, I'll be honest. But if nothing else, that's pretty decent. Also, Stoneaxe now lays Stealth Rocks, which is pretty cool. Again, another big buff for this. I'm kind of hoping that Sharpness boosts this, but I do actually need to check. There is legitimately like a dock I can go off of, actually. that I could check for this, and I think that's what I'm going to pull up real quick because I did not have that one open. Let's see, so sharpness. It does look like Stone Axe is boosted from that. So yeah, even better. Honestly, that's a really good option for it. I think Cleaver will probably be in like the UU tier for sure with this. The fact that it's going to boost Stone Axe and it doesn't need to rely on Sheer Force to do so will be like legitimately really good because it can keep the Stealth Rock option that's also going to still be boosted anyway. Next up, we have Ursaluna. It's got a lot. Facade, Sword Stance, Close Combat, Gong Shot are just the most noteworthy of many moves this thing got. This thing also got options such as Drain Punch, Earthquake, Player Huff, Crunch, Trailblaze, Taunt, Bulk Up, Belly Drum. This got a lot. I'll be honest, this is gonna be an OU nightmare. This will be a VGC nightmare. It might even get an OU ban. I don't know if I can confidently say it'll get an OU ban, considering we've allowed Landers for so many generations, or even outside of Landers. If you put Landers aside for a second, we've allowed like Melmetal in Gen 8. We've allowed a lot of more broken Pokemon. But at the same time, this is a regional dex, even with the home mons included. This might get a ban off of that meta. I wouldn't be shocked. Truthfully, I think Ursaluna is going to be a broken piece of shit. It will make Trigger Move really good strategy in singles, and in doubles is going to break it. I'm not looking forward to this Pokemon being around, but I will use it on 50 teams. Next up is Basket Legion. It gets Swift Swim over Rattle. This will be huge. Legitimately, this will probably be one of, if not the best Rain Dance options for Swift Swim teams, especially for physical. Undeniably, it will be the best. Outside of maybe Barraskewda, which, to be fair, just solely because the fact it's fast without a rain, but this will be a nightmare on rain teams, especially with adaptability, even just as a breaker for rain instead of Swift Swim. The fact that you have to play around both of those will be terrifying. This will be a legitimate OU mon in singles rain because of the fact that you have to play that 50-50 and no one's going to want to lose it either. Last respects as well, this looks like it gets plus 50 base power for every fainted ally. So if you bring this in as the 6th Pokemon and all your other 5 died, this is a now 300 base power physical ghost move. Broken as fuck. This is an easy OU Pokemon in my opinion. But even still, to be fair, it could if you bring this in as a start. It's a base 50 power weak ghost option physically. At the same time though, finally gets a good base power, good at all physical ghost move for physical ghost, considering its best physical ghost move was, and that's it. It didn't even get Astonish, for fuck's sakes. So this is a pretty big buff for Basket Legion. Actually, I'm really terrified of this Pokemon in singles. Will legitimately be a nightmare. Next up, we have Sneasler. Gets Gunk Shot, Sword Stance, Rock Slide, U-Turn, all of which are really big buffs. It got a couple other things too, which I don't think matter a ton personally, but it gets like Acrobatics, Fire Punch, Fake Out. These are kind of cool. Fake Out will be good in VGC, and that's about where the conversation ends. This was already going to be an OU Pokemon. It's not going to get banned because of this. I think it'll just be a decent mon. And Burden will be kind of cool, but it won't really make a difference. Truthfully, I'll be honest. I'm hoping it just got Unburdened added, because if this thing lost Poison Touch, I'm a little upset, because Bandits would have probably really appreciated Poison Touch with stuff like Dire Claw, Close Combat, Drain Punch, and U-Turn. That would have been really cool. Regardless though, it's still gonna be an OU mon either way, even if it did lose Poison Touch. These just help it define the tier more. Overquill gets a lot going for it. It gets Crunch, Gunk Shot, Aquajet, Sword Stance. You also get stuff like Liquidation, Waterfall, Taunt, Spikes, and Toxic Spikes. Huge for Overquill. This will legitimately be a really good option, and I'm kind of curious if they give these things to Quillfish too. I don't know if this extends to Quillfish Hisui, I'll be honest. I haven't checked, but I could actually pull this up, to be fair. Let me pull up Quillfish Hisui form. So the very least, if nothing else, it does look like it got Spikes and Toxic Spikes, which is pretty cool. It looks like it's still got Destiny Bond, which is pretty cool again. Let's see about the TMs, if nothing else, because this will kind of make the difference. It does look like it got Crunch, which is pretty cool. The Violet could be pretty decent, if nothing else, between Crunch and Gunk Shot, as well as Poison Jab. This also seems to have gotten Taunt. So yeah, the baby could also be pretty viable as like a Violet Toxic Spike setter with Taunt as well. But for the Overquill though, this will be a lot more viable on Rain. I wanted to mention both because I genuinely didn't even think to check for baby Quillfish before the video. It's gonna be really viable though, in my opinion. They're both gonna be viable as fuck. Finally though, we have Venomoris, the fucking ban case. Getting a superpower alone in tandem with already having stuff like Player Off and Psychic, then Headbutt for a Psychic option will be already really good for physical sets with Contrary. Having Focus Blast as well as a good option for special sets, it doesn't make a huge difference, but it's a lot stronger than Mystical Fire if it even keeps it, because I've heard that Mystical Fire is a lot less distributed this gen, as well as it will be important for Earth Power. If we look through for Venomoris moveset as well, just to make sure this thing keeps some other options, it does look like it gets some good options in its moveset. but they're mostly support based, stuff like Taunt, for example, which will be pretty big. You also get stuff like Sludge Bomb, which will be pretty cool for other fairies. You got the weathers, a lot of other stuff doesn't really matter here, I'll be honest. As far as the level up boost that goes for Anamoris though, this thing still seems to get Springtide Storm, which that got adapted into, I didn't actually check for this one, a Springtide Storm. So this looks like it still drops the opponent's attack by 30%, which, oh no, it lowers their attack stat. Yeah, no, okay, so yeah, it seems like it drops the attack stat by 1 stage with a 30% chance, which would be kind of cool. It's 100 base power with 80% accuracy, which is whatever. As far as the other storms go, does it seem like the other storms? Yep, okay. So the other storms were kept for the Thunderous and Tornadus and Landorus. They're all 80% accuracy, 100 base power special options. With Bleak Wind, it's a 30% speed drop. With Wild Bolt, it's a 20% paralysis. And with Sandseer, it's a 20% burn. Wanted to go over those, I guess, because I didn't even think to check about them, but they're whatever. Truthfully, I don't think that any of them will actually see usage personally, because I think they're all worse versions of every other option, besides maybe for Torrent. No, they're all worse options. Besides, I guess, Anamoris's, which is solely there just because of the fact that it's a special option for Fairy. They can maybe drop attack, but even still, I think it's worse than Moonblast subjectively. Yeah, they're all worse options. Final answer, they're all worse options. But even still, Anamoris might get a ban with Contrary at least. The Therian form will just be a good option though. Having Superpower and Focus Blast with boost set will be pretty useful. But regardless though, let me know what you guys think of these boost set buffs. If there's anything you think you want to use, let me know down below. I know I didn't cover everything, so I'm going to link the full Smogon site down below. There's a lot of other stuff as well as nerfs that are linked here that I didn't even think had any reason to be mentioned. And to be fair, a lot of these, a lot of people were probably going to say did not matter. That's fine. I thought they might have made a difference. If you enjoyed though, leave a like and subscribe for more. Shout out to channel members being Josh K Ultraplayer, Mia, and Zeke Zero. Your support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to join the channel membership, link down below to that, as well as the Twitter and Discord to stay up to date on future content. And I will see you guys later. Until then, peace out, guys.